All right, and now finally, I'd just like to give you a sense of why I have devoted 8 years of my life to working on the issue of RFID, and that is because there are some really horrifying plans afoot for what the powers that be would like to do with us once we become microchipped. And whether that is microchipped with an implant, whether that is microchipped with an ID card, whether that's microchipped with a chip in your shoe, the plans are out there, and they're very disturbing. So I'd like to share those with you. If you'd like to learn more about this, you can read our book Spy Chips, which, even though it was published in 2006, is probably more timely today than it was then. It was a book about 5 years ahead of its time. All of the things that we reported on in that book are happening in lockstep, one after another. It is like a roadmap to the future. All right, RFID, as you may know, is now converging with payment devices. We've got a couple 100 million RFID-enabled credit cards that have already been issued around the globe. What this means is that payment stations, what the industry calls POS, or point-of-sale terminals, what we would call a cash register, are now being equipped all over the globe with the ability to, if someone were to choose to do this, to pay with simply a wave of your hand or just pressing your hand to the reader device. The technology is the same. The RFID chip in a credit card is essentially the same device that you can put into your right hand, and I believe Emil Grafstra is going to be talking to us about having a chip in his hand. So the infrastructure is being built in order to do this. When I say it's the same technology, it operates on a slightly different frequency. There's a couple of technical things that would need to be tweaked in order to retrofit this to accommodate an implantable microchip, but it could certainly be done. RFID tags are already being used in a number of applications, in amusement parks, in theaters, in outdoor theaters, music shows, concerts, and the like. People are already using these RFID tags. Same idea, you just swipe your wrist, and that gives you access to walk into a building, or access to pay for something, or open up the turnstile, or ultimately, probably the next step would be to get on the subway. Your subway tickets all over the world now are incorporating RFID as well. So we're building the infrastructure for RFID to be your system to access things, to make payments, to get into places, to authorize yourself, and that is just one step away from the chip in you. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security, in the post-9/11 frenzy of hysteria that they're undergoing, has begun issuing RFID tag driver's licenses. Now, currently they're voluntary. We had a big fight in our country a couple of years back over something called Real ID, which was a national ID card. I know you guys, and thank you, that here in Australia you fought that back into its ugly cave as well. But all around the globe, India, Mexico, places where you normally wouldn't even think of a national infrastructure, a database of citizens, they're all moving to a national ID program. And if you've never heard of it, there's an organization called the Porvoo Group, Porvoo, out of Finland, which wants to consolidate all national IDs to be part of a global standard, and they're working with the UN to accomplish that. So we know that this idea of global ID is coming. We know that the passports, the ICAO, I'm not remembering my acronym right, but the global organization that manages travel documents has already put RFID tags in virtually everyone's passports, including U.S. passports. And now the Department of Homeland Security is putting them into certain people's driver's licenses. If they want to pay a little bit extra, they can cross the border into Canada or Mexico with this remotely readable chip. The problem is it's readable from 30 to 60 feet away, right through your purse, your wallet, or your backpack by anybody with a reader. It's not encrypted, it's not protected, it's not shielded, it is not anything. It is a straight number that beams straight out over the air, and in fact the guy in the back room at Walmart with his little RFID inventory scanner can scan you from 60 feet away. Creepy stuff. Anybody who's taken notes, you can look up a YouTube video by a guy named Chris Paget, P-A-G-E-T. Chris Paget actually drove down the streets of San Francisco with a reader on the side of his car and picked up half a dozen of these in just 2 hours, just out of people's wallets. All right, let me talk about some of the company plans. IBM, the bad boys of this RFID space. IBM has patented something called the Person Tracking Unit. Lovely name. That's their name, not mine. They came up with this idea to use RFID tags on people's belongings or on them to track them. Plain and simple. RFID is tracking technology. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That's why it was developed. That's how it's promoted. That's how it's used in warehouses. It is used for tracking, period. They say when a person carrying or wearing items having RFID tags enters, an RFID tag scanner scans the tag on that person to determine their exact identity and track them around. Where do they want to track people? What are we talking, like nuclear facilities? No. We're talking about everywhere. Shopping malls, airports, train stations, bus stations, elevators, trains, airplanes, restrooms, sports arenas, libraries, theaters, museums. In other words, everywhere. Everywhere. That's the plan. And if you look up IBM's Smarter Planet website, if you want to get chills down your spine, take a look at the number of things that IBM wants to control, and they want to use RFID to do it. RFID tags embedded in your belongings is what I've primarily been fighting, and I think we were pretty successful with that. We did a big boycott against Benetton back in 2003 that got them to cancel plans to put 15 million RFID tags in women's bras and underwear. So not only could you track a woman around, but you could actually, with your little click of your reader device, you could determine what color her bra was. Creepy stuff. So we fought back, we got that stopped, and now plans like this one to put RFID tags in your shoes have kind of been put on hold, thank goodness. Otherwise, I believe, had we not been doing this work since 2003, that probably every single person in this room would be carrying probably at least a dozen RFID tags. That's how gung-ho the industry was back in 2002, 2003. So where have they gone instead? Well, this plan is not going away. This plan to use doorways and readers and place these things everywhere is still moving forward, but it's moving forward with a slightly different plan. Now, instead of saying we want to track inventory and people for marketing purposes, now they're saying we want to track people for anti-terrorism purposes, for security purposes. So this idea that as you walk through a doorway, you could be identified, and by the way, take a look at the one on the right, because this really gave me the creeps when I saw it. We all know when we walk through a portal this way, but you could walk through a wide open space and they could sandwich you this way, and you'd never even know that you'd walk through a reader device. So they're working on it. This is a great example of how this stuff can be abused. Whenever I testify before a government committee and a lobbyist for the RFID industry gets up, they always say, oh, Catherine Albrecht, she's pie in the sky, none of this stuff is even possible, it's not feasible, it'll never happen. And I always point to Alton Towers, which is a British amusement park where they actually issue you an RFID wristband when you go into the park. And as you walk around the park, you go on the rides, you eat a hot dog, you go to the bathroom, do whatever you do. There are stations all around the park with hidden video cameras linked up to RFID readers. And as you walk by, they detect this little chip on your wrist. They take a couple of, 15, 20 seconds of footage of you walking by, and then they store it in your file. See, that's what makes this different from a standard surveillance camera. Surveillance camera watches the 20 feet in front of it. If something happens there, then they know about it. If it doesn't, whatever. And they have to go back through hours and hours and hours of footage to see when you walk through those 20 feet. But with RFID, you can take your surveillance cameras and you can actually create a dossier of where one single individual was on all of your cameras. And so what happens at the end of the day is you go to leave Alton Towers, you go past this big desk and there's a screen behind it, and as you approach, the system reads your chip and starts playing all these videos and little screens behind there, and you get to see you going at the water slide, and you get to see yourself eating the ice cream, and then this very friendly woman says, for just 20 pounds British sterling, you can buy a DVD memento of your trip today and see all of these videos. So if they can do it in Alton Towers, they can do it elsewhere. And they are doing it elsewhere. Well, this one's hypothetical. Well, I don't know. I'm sure this company doesn't think it's hypothetical, but there are companies actually working on ways to implant RFID readers into forests, into every square acre of land on the globe, using the vibrations of the wind passing through trees as a power source to transmit this information. All right, so now let's talk about where it's not theoretical, China. Biggest RFID market on the globe in 2008, it wasn't Walmart, it wasn't Gillette, it wasn't all the people I've been fighting, it was the government of China who put in an order for over 1 billion RFID tags to go into every national ID card issued to every Chinese citizen. And if you've got one of these in your pocket, which you are required by law to do if you're Chinese, then a Chinese government official, a communist police officer, could simply point his reader device at you and get back a database of information that would tell him your entire educational history, your health history, your employment history, even your reproductive history, all in his little handheld device. Now, these national ID cards were not put in place by Chinese corporations. They were put there by American companies, by Western companies. IBM, Cisco, Dell, Hewlett-Packard were all the companies that helped China put this whole system together, and where they're testing this out, their petri dish is Shenzhen, China. It's a big industrial city, high-tech, lots of high-rises, lots of modern industry there. And what they've done is they've turned the city of Shenzhen, China, into a tracking laboratory, as it were. They are linking up the same kinds of things that we saw at Alton Towers, where they've got the video cameras hooked up to the surveillance, hooked up to the RFID, because they've got a captive population of 1 billion people walking around with this technology. And you better believe IBM would love to test out its person tracking units and its smarter planet, and they've got the perfect place to do it with the help of the